Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Nuts and Bolts MMA, where you get the nuts and bolts of what's going on inside the world of MMA. I am your host, Travis Montgomery. Please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. You can subscribe on Apple and Spotify. We are most places where you can subscribe. So please do me a favor and go and do that. It helps the reach for us. If you're enjoying the content, then help others receive it as well. So we have UFC 264 to talk about, and I am joined by Nikki B. UFC 264 is this Saturday. This will be only solely breaking down some of the fights, most of the fights actually on this card. But Nikki B, who is president of the Diaz Brothers fan club, who I just figured out has some broadcasting experience. So tell me what you told me earlier about working at a radio station and what was that like? And how are you doing today, by the way?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm just fantastic.
In regards to the radio station, yeah, I worked at KABC 790. I think it was under Citadel Radio at the time. It's out in like Culver City, and I was working as basically a production assistant for the news department during the morning shows. So Peter Tilden and Frosty, Heidi, and Frank show.
What were your duties there? Like, what did you actually do?
Most of what I did was call and do a little like basic research on stories, and then do some interviews, and then write the script for the story, edit the interview into as short of a sound clip as I could while still giving it something cohesive to actually say, and then sending all that over to the desk anchor who would then do the news. It was Deborah Mark at the time.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So that was a paid gig, or
it was not paid. It was like my last semester when I was doing broadcast journalism in college.
That's awesome, man. So that's cool that we're doing this now, because I've always been passionate about talk radio, which led into broadcasting, podcasting. In 2013, I was on a show called Political Diarrhea. And that was fun. In 2013, that's when I started. And then I went to I've had a couple different MMA shows, but they were always for another website or something else. And then I went to college for digital music production, which is audio engineering. So it's along the same line. So as soon as I got it, I've been producing music engineering since I was 18 years old. Yeah, I'm even before that, maybe like 16. So when it came time to have the audio side of the podcasting world, it was already just came naturally to me. That's why I could throw in all these loops and stuff like that. So that's cool. And what happened from there? So you went to school for broadcast journalism and stuff like that?
I did. And so that was right around the time, it was like 2008, 2009. So it was like right around the time that like social media was exploding and traditional media was on the downswing. Then the housing recession hit. So I really didn't work in that field, and I went into another job, and I was a production manager for a small business for a long time. And then, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years ago, I started writing movie review stuff with a friend of mine who had started his own website. And, it had some traction, but realistically, just working with this particular friend of mine, good friend, still friends to this day, but like as business partners, and that endeavor just didn't work for me. So I moved on, did my own thing. And so I just, that way I can work on my own schedule, promote what I want to promote, write what I want to write about, not have to worry about that. I did some writing for it was LA TV USA. I did some sports writing for them probably around 2013-ish, and worked for Young Hollywood as a private contractor doing a like special digital catalog project for them.
Wow,
Probably
this
a
is
little
so
bit
cool to
before
hear.
that.
I love it.
So full circle, back to broadcasting, talking sports, which is what I initially set out to do in the first place.
Yeah.
So somehow, everything just kind of came back into place.
Yeah, I need it in my life. That is why I started this. Well, partly in part because I can't be the father that I want to. So I got to find some way to fill the free time. And I'm obsessed with MMA and I have no one to talk with about it. So that's why I'm glad I found you guys, because you are that kind of release for me.
Yeah, you got people to talk MMA with now.
Yeah. And you also have a Twitch stream, which I've been wanting to join in, but you never send the link to me. So I'm a little upset about that. So what do you do? What do you do on that?
I'll put it in the chat. My brother has been doing his own Twitch thing for a while, and he wanted me to come on. And so like we talk movies, and occasionally we'll get into some sports and politics stuff, depending on what he's talking about. But we do that Thursday afternoons. I can send you the link to it. His show is called Welcome to Vangerville, and he was on the Shane Show, which it was fairly popular.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, they moved it to podcast format, and then kind of when COVID hit, they kind of just had to go their separate ways because of like how they wanted to go about working. So yeah, I'll put the link up in the chat if you want to check it out.
That's awesome. So you are passionate about this craft, and so am I. And another thing that I am fired up about is UFC 264. It's the biggest card of the year. So here is our UFC 264 breakdown. We're going to start off with Amari Akhmedov versus Brad Tavares. Amari Akhmedov is 21-5-1. Brad Tavares is 18-7-0. He is minus 165 favorite, plus 140. I think this one's kind of hard to call. Do you have any thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, it is a tough fight to call. Let me see. You said minus 170 plus 140. That looks accurate. I just think Tavares, like, he was a super hot prospect at one point. And I think like he was like 13-1 or undefeated. And like since then, he's accumulated the majority of his losses. So he's kind of like every other fight, he gets a win. And, he doesn't have bad losses at all. So it's kind of hard to like count him out. But, Adesanya's not a bad loss. Like even Shabazian's not a bad loss. But I think he's like 5-3 or 5-4 in his last 9. Joel Romero's on that list of losses, Whitaker. So it's like he's only lost to like the very, very best for the most part of the middleweights. But it's like, I don't know if he's still that prospect that we were hoping that he was going to be at one point. And then Omari, like he lost to Weidman, who held the belt, and he had a draw with Vettori, who fought for the belt, and everything else has been wins for the last like 5 years. So he's at least trending in the right direction. I can see why Tavares like maybe is the favorite here, but like they both have extensive UFC experience. So I think maybe minus 170 is a little too wide. It seems closer to a pick'em fight for me because like there's not even a huge size difference here.
There's not.
What do you think?
And yeah, Akhmedov seems to fade, and Brad Tavares is a dog. He's there for the entirety of the fight when it goes 3 rounds. So I think Akhmedov probably wins round 1. Tavares will win round 3, but I think it's going to come down to round 2. And I mean, these guys are both big, strong people. Middleweights these days are crazy. Even though these guys are aging middleweights, they're like huge. I'm sure they both cut weight to make 185. I don't have a bet here, but I think Tavares is going to end up winning more rounds, if that makes sense, because Akhmedov seems to fade. And, a lot of people like to give Chris Weidman flack, but he's still a middleweight champion. He beat Anderson Silva when Anderson Silva was the best middleweight in the world. And when you hear about his training sessions, like he's so good in the gym. He has been in South Carolina with Wonder Boy. Obviously he's got the knee injury that he's recovering from. And this is a little Chris Weidman tangent, but you can compare that to Akhmedov. It was a really close fight. It was close. So
yeah, and I think like Weidman needed that one after some losses, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, he might have been cut if he didn't win that one, which is kind of crazy to see a UFC champion cut.
And it's like, the truth is, like you said, like Chris Weidman is a bad dude, right? Like none of his losses are poor quality losses, right? Like he moved up and got knocked out, like broke his leg, unfortunately, in the last one. Against Rockhold, like he wasn't even fighting that bad. He made like a tactical error that put him in a really bad position. So it's like that was a mistake, but like the fight was close and he wasn't getting like completely blown out or anything. So
I think he was actually winning that fight until the wheel kick.
It seemed like it was starting to trend back in his direction at the time of the wheel kick, which made that decision like more questionable, like looking at the fight from the outside. But Weidman still has a lot to offer. Didn't he beat Kelvin Gastelum also too in his?
Yes. That was one of the career rescue missions for him. Yeah, he beat Gastelum. So you have a pick in this one. I'm going to pick Tavares, but it's not going to be a bet because Akhmedov could spark him in the first round probably too.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. The combat sambo guys always like give me that idea that like they're gonna win somehow. But like you said, Tavares is a dog. Like he's gonna fight it out for 15 minutes. So if there's a bet to make on this fight, it may be fight goes to decision, rather than pick either of those guys outright. Because to me, it's a coin toss of a fight. But if you can get some money on that fight, like over 2.5 rounds, that's probably not a bad bet.
Yeah. So it's over under 2.5 rounds is juiced at minus 250.
Yeah, that's not great, but
which almost makes me want to put a bet on fight doesn't go the distance because
yeah, odds wise, I mean, you might as well go where the money favors you.
I'm not going to do it, but it's tempting.
The best is what, under a round and a half? Plus 275. I don't know how is it exactly like 2.5 minutes into the second round is where they count that, or is it just?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's 7.5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, if you could throw a small bet at that and like
plus 275. Yeah. That's plus 330 if you're on 5 dimes, which I am, I guess. It's hard to say because Bet Any Sport, which is a book I use now, used to be affiliated with 5 Dimes. 5 Dimes canceled all their accounts except for some of them. I was not welcome back. Maybe because I did a payout at the end. I don't know. Maybe they want the losers there. All right. So while we're talking about betting, let's do a little recap from the Cyril Gagné versus Alexander Volkov, which was UFC Vegas 30. Going into that event, I was minus 9.45 units, which is not awesome. And I guess maybe this is a time to defend myself a little bit, that the first bet that I ever placed was on Shogun versus Liddell. And I picked Shogun and I won some money there. And it's been all downhill ever since. I'm just kidding. No. I've had some success. Lifetime am I a winner? Probably not, but I have a lot of experience. And what I give here to you is over 10 years, maybe closer to 15 years of betting experience. And, if you really want to make some money, sports betting, like serious investing, then you should go to MMAformoney.com, who is my boy who runs that site. I used to write for them. I hosted a podcast for them before. They're serious. They have algorithms that they do it mathematically. My boy is on it. I do this from little fight tape experience and basically what I see, how fighters are trending. You know, there's some rules that I like to follow. So I'm not just shooting from the hip as somebody who just started watching the sport or just started betting. And by no means am I saying that I am the greatest MMA bettor or like a crazy expert or anything like that. I have a lot of experience. I have a lot of passion invested. So that's where my knowledge comes from. And I like to have fun on the weekends and throw some money down. It's not crazy money. So if I do lose, it's not my rent or anything like that. I'm not crazy degenerate. So anyways, we went into UFC Vegas 30 minus 9.45 units. I actually picked up 1.7 units. It was weird because the Andre Fili fight, if that one would have come through, I could have put a lot of more damage into that total. But we are at 7.75 units. I had the round robin parlay with Tanner Bozer, Andre Fili, and Rachmanov, who I can't wait to see that guy fight again, by the way. And then I put two underdogs out there, but then I also said that I was going to risk, if that round robin hit, I was going to put 2 units on Cyril Gane to win 1.5, which I did. So ended up being a profitable event, which is good because I needed a life raft here. And I've got some bets for 264 and we could keep it moving.
We're going to get you back above even. We're going to get you out of the red and into the black.
It'll take a couple events, and you know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. I could easily try and just say I'm going to put 15 units on this guy or I'm going to put 10 units, but no, that's silly. People do that. That's what dumb people do, and they're not serious. I'm actually betting with real money. There's some touts out there that I think don't even bet their own shit. And, you know, it's not as prevalent these days as it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago when MMA betting started getting popular. There's a lot of bad touts out there. A lot of people, like I said to you before, there's a curse of somebody who starts publicly tracking their record or gets on a podcast like I did. So many of the times it goes wrong for them, but you know, we're going to stick it out. We're going to pass over some of these fights. Jessica I versus Jennifer Maia. I mean, I don't know, Maia by decision.
Probably. I mean, it's an important fight for that division, but like probably not too important in terms of like the public interest in that fight.
Yeah, Zagomagulov. He's probably somebody to look out for, but Jeremy Rivera is kind of a threat at that dog price, but we'll move on. Trevin Giles versus Drakikius Duplessis. Do you have any thoughts on this one?
I mean, I like Trevin Giles. I want to see this fight. He's only lost twice, and he beat Dolidze in his most recent fight. And we saw like Dolidze kind of, you know, ragdoll a smaller opponent, but again, he's a guy that's like 10-1, so pretty solid win against Dolidze in his last one. And Duplessis? I hope I said that correctly.
Yeah, it's hard. You know, I listen to all these shows and I do my reading and fight tape, but when it comes time for me to remember how to pronounce some of these fighters, it just does not come out the right way.
Yeah, I mean, really solid record as well. Only lost twice, and I think the only knock against him would be that he's only fought in the UFC once to this point. So, you'd have to at least give some of the big show edge to Trevin Giles. But he's 3-2 in his last 5 since going back to 2019. And like Zach Cummings and Gerald Mearshart, the 2 losses. But he bounced back with 3 in a row. So it's nothing to sneeze at. This is a good fight, though. And I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, it's pretty even. It's pretty much a pick 'em right now, with Trevin Giles being the slight underdog. I kind of feel like James Krause won that fight, and I was really pissed off. I know that James Krause took that fight last minute, and shout out to him because right now he has one of the best training camps, in the world. So people out of there have been winning. I can't think of the name of it right now. But yeah, it should be an entertaining fight. This is a stacked card. This could easily be, on the main card of a regular.
Yeah, fight night event. And both these guys are finishers too. So the odds of this fight being exciting, I think, are pretty good. So that's why I'm excited to see it.
So you can get the under at -110, -115 at a lot of places. That could be something to look forward to. But not an official pick for me. I might throw it in like a fun $5 parlay or something.
Under a round and a half at +170 is not too bad.
Correct.
But, yeah, over a round and a half, -225. Like, take a flyer on the under a round and a half. Probably a little bit more exciting, especially if you win.
Yeah, because if the finish doesn't happen soon, they start to get a little tired. Power starts diminishing. Their decision making starts going down. But let's move on to Ryan Hall, who is a +200 underdog. He's 8-1 versus Ilia Tempura, who is -230. He is undefeated at 10-0. This fight is super interesting.
Agreed.
This is I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, me too, man. Ryan Hall's that guy that a lot of people, don't really think very highly of. They think he's going to get smoked in this fight. But he's also that guy that hasn't been able to get a fight in a while because he's particularly dangerous in his specialty. And there's not too many of those guys that, exist anymore. And like you saw what he did to a guy like BJ Penn, who's a very skilled grappler. And it just is like, okay, in a blink of an eye, you could have a devastating knee injury if you mess around with this guy. So it's a high risk, low reward kind of fight for a lot of guys. And Tafuera, he's, I think, 9-0, 10-0?
10-0.
And if you combine both of these guys' records, they're on an 18-fight win streak because Hall hasn't lost since his debut fight. I don't know. Like, it's hard to say that Hall should be favored here because I don't think he should be favored. But I also really like his approach mentally to fighting, and I like his style. I like that he's like such a specialist in his particular leg lock approach. And that just is intriguing to me. And I would like to see him win. And at +200, it's, he's the underdog for a reason. But if it ends up where he's anywhere in on a leg and that fight goes to the ground, I think the odds would swing very heavily in his favor at that moment. The problem is going to be whether or not he can get it there, So we're looking at maybe like a Damian Maia, Bilal Muhammad type of fight where Hall is going to want to get in and get the fight to the ground. And, Tapura is going to have to fend that off, which is why Ryan Hall is interesting with kind of his entries into those leg lock attempts. So he doesn't just set it up with, like a single leg and push you against the fence like Damian Maia would.
Yeah, he's flying around trying to do those Illuminati rolls. So for this bout, I'm going to be taking the under 2.5 rounds at -130. I'm actually going to risk 2.6 units to win 2 because I think the most likely scenario here is that Tempura knocks him out in round 1 or Ryan Hall gets a submission within 2.5 rounds. So I really don't see this one going to the scorecards. We could even see like a more unlikely scenario where they starting round 3 and now Aaliyah is tired and Ryan Hall might be able to get him down, and it takes like 0.5 seconds for that guy to lock in a fight ending submission. But also, if I just had to pick, I'm probably picking Topuria, although I would rather see Ryan Hall win for multiple reasons. One being just because I've heard this guy talk on multiple podcasts now. I think he's hyper intelligent. I really like the things that he has to say and his approach to even certain things when he's asked about just like general life stuff. He just seems like a pretty like logical, well-grounded type of human being, which a lot of these fighters aren't.
Yeah.
Just put it that way.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it is cage fighting after all, and it's not made for everybody. So to see a guy like Hall, who is as intelligent and articulate and thoughtful in his approach to the game as he is, without really bringing ego into it, like, it's refreshing to see that. I mean, not everybody is going to like that, so that's fair. But like, you got to assume that the way he talks about the sport, the way he talks about his approach to fighting, that he's going to be well prepared for like the kind of fight that's going to be brought to him, right? So he's got to know where he's deficient in the fight, or at least where he's the underdog and where he's the favorite. So I think for me, like, to see that he's plus 400 to win by submission and like plus 320 to win inside the distance, like if Hall wins inside the distance, it's going to be a submission, I think. So I wouldn't be upset taking plus 400 submission odds for him.
Right.
That's his most likely path to victory.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good flyer. That's not official, but I might throw something on it. But I like the under here because, I mean, Topuria he's one of the best signings from Europe that the UFC has had in 2020. He's undefeated for a reason. That means the shit hasn't happened yet. You know what I'm saying? Like,
how many fights has he had in the UFC at this point?
I think 2.
I had it up and then I closed it. Let me see.
He's had 2, yeah.
2? Yeah, Yusuf Zalal, that's right. That's not a bad win at all.
He was an underdog there.
Yeah. So he's got some good wins. And it's just like,
Sammy Jackson's
Hall's so inactive. It's tough to be like, oh yeah, he's not like on this huge win.
That's the other problem with him. So like you mentioned before, people don't want to fight this guy, and then he's also had injuries. Mm-hmm. People pull out of fights. He's had some bad luck. I'd like to see him be more active, and he doesn't believe that ring rust is real, but maybe it is. I think the more comfortable that you are inside the octagon, the better decisions that you make, and the more things will go better for you, obviously.
Inactivity is not good for fighters, whether or not ring rust is, a real thing in his mind or not. Obviously, like, the more you're doing something, the better you're going to get at it. So if he's been training and he feels confident, like, I'm happy with that. I'd like to see him win. No offense to Topuria, but there's so few guys that are like Ryan Hall that I will cheer for him and I'll back him in this.
Yeah, there's very few specialists left in the sport, and he's been training with Wonder Boy, South Carolina. Chris Weidman also goes out there. I think Wonder Boy's going to have a sneaky fight camp coming up here soon. I think it's just happening through osmosis right now, but wait for that man to, after he retires, I think he's going to have one of the legit gyms moving forward.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And then now moving forward, probably this is so wild. This whole card is just crazy. Fight of the night potential right here. Nico Price, who is plus 145. He is 14-4 versus Michel Pereira, minus 170. He's 25-11-0. Oh boy. Fireworks for this one. At least we could kind of comfortably predict that. What do you think about this fight?
Yeah, it should definitely be entertaining. And like Nico's always going to give you an entertaining fight for the most part. I think he's got like 4 performance of the nights in his last 8-9 fights. So he's always in the conversation to have one of the best fights of the night. But he also is like, he's been trading wins and losses here for a while. And I think what the last one was the no contest to Cerrone.
It was a draw, but it got overturned
because of the Nevada State.
The draw got overturned to a no contest. If that makes any fucking sense, then please DM me, because I don't see how either of it's differently. Also, the Nevada Athletic Commission has now decriminalized weed, but we'll talk about that in the next episode.
But that's what led to this decision on the Cerrone fight, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. So I saw Nico Price on Media Day, and he's stopped smoking weed now. And the way that he's talking about how he feels because of that, he says that his cardio is better. He admitted to smoking weed all week long during that fight, his last fight. And he says that his precision is on point. Another thing that he said that really caught my attention is that he doesn't want to get hit anymore. And for someone like him, it might be too late, because he's been hit a whole hell of a lot in his career. So hopefully he's still got his faculties about him and his chin is not gone, but he's not going to approach this fight as take one to give one or whatever. He's trying to, I guess quitting weed makes you not want to get hit in the face anymore, maybe, which seems kind of counterintuitive. And unironically, he is now going to be a safer fighter for it. I know that when I have been a heavy weed user before, and when I get off of it, I feel pumped, you know. Weed has its benefits, but it also has a little bit of downfalls, I guess. But once you get off of it, you do feel a little bit more clear.
Yeah, I could see it. Like, it's probably really good for recovery, like post-workout relaxation. I mean, I wouldn't want to be high going into the fight, because, you know, most of the time, like, if I'm going to be high, I just want to like sit on the couch. You know, I'm not trying to like get into a cage and fight somebody.
Especially the California weed, that shit will give you anxiety real quick.
Yeah, so I can see where he's coming from, though. Like, so maybe it helped him sharpen like his mental approach to fighting by getting off of it, and you know, more power to him. I think this is going to be a good fight, though, because both these guys are kind of like 50-50 in their last couple years, and you know, it's got performance of the night or fight of the night potential written on it, like you said.
For sure. I wish that they would offer us, well, at my book at least, I can't get it, but at some books you can get under 2.5 rounds, which it's still juiced, minus 175 or minus 130. I might take a shot on the minus 130, but that's not going to be official for me. I'm going to sit back and enjoy the fireworks, because this is going to be crazy. And, you know, Michelle Pereira, his last fight versus Chaos Williams, he kind of dialed back the craziness a little bit and ended up going to decision. I mean, everyone thought that these two guys going in there was going to be fireworks too. So maybe we're in store for another letdown, but
both guys are going to come out being very tactical, not wanting to get into a crazy slugfest.
Yeah, with Nico Price saying he doesn't want to get hit anymore, and Michelle Pereira taking his tactical approach in his last fight, maybe we're in for a letdown. But either way, these guys are both dangerous. Some people have said that Nico Price's chin might be fading. I don't know. I listened to him during Media Day, and he kind of sold me a little bit. I probably will throw something on him, but it's not going to be official. It's not one of the more confident picks on the card.
I mean, he's looked good when he's won lately. So And I mean, losing to Jeff Neal and Vicente Luque are not really like terrible losses.
Yeah, no shame in that.
No, not at all. So yeah, I don't know. This is another like really close fight. I don't know that I would definitively say one guy should be heavily favored here.
Yeah, if you get a good price on the under 2.5 rounds, I would say take it, especially if it's closer to even money. I'm going to go with my boy Nico Price here. Do you have a pick?
I'll go with Nico. I mean, I've watched him longer at this point. And at plus 135 in a fight that I think is close to a pick 'em, you're gonna max out your earnings potential with Nico on that one.
You will max out your earning potential, which brings us to our next bout versus Max Griffin versus Carlos Condit. You see what I did there?
Yeah.
That's called a segue, people. I'm just kidding. All right, Max Griffin, who is 17-8-0. He's a minus 190 favorite over the natural born killer, Carlos Condit, 32-13. A lot of fights under that. He is plus 160. After a 5-fight losing streak, Carlos Condit has now got a 2-fight winning streak under his belt over Matt Brown and the dude with Court McGee. God, there's so many names to try and keep track of.
Yeah.
So here we go. I think, Carlos Condit has a shot here, but his takedown defense really worries me. What do you think about all this?
Yeah. I mean, I feel you on that. Like his it's not like that his bottom game is even that bad. It's just he doesn't seem to like finish, from his back. He's not threatening enough submissions really to make the fight back, to get back where he wants to be. So I mean, the five losses in a row, I mean, you got to look at it like one of those was Robbie Lawler as the champion, I think. Damian Maia.
All right, hold on for a second. Hold on.
Yeah.
Carlos Condit won that fight
Against Robbie.
Yes,
it was a great fight.
He should have been champ, in my opinion.
I haven't watched it in a while. I remember it being a great fight, and
it's one of the best fights of all time. If anyone has not seen Carlos Condit versus Robbie Lawler, go watch that. It was a title fight. It was 5 rounds, and it was crazy for the whole 25 minutes almost. Yeah. And it was close, but I gave rounds Condit 1-3-5. I remember distinctively because that was my Twitter name for a while. I had Condit 1,3,5. I was very adamant about that. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I'm a huge Carlos Condit fan, right? Like he was one of like the initial probably 3 fighters that like made me watch the sport. It was him, Nick Diaz, and GSP were like the 3 that I followed at the very beginning. So it's like I've been watching Carlos like since way back in the WEC days. And what I was saying about like his 5 losses, like I mean, Neil Magny was up in contender range at that time. And Chiesta's huge. So like none of the losses to me are like particularly terrible. It's just stringing 5 of them back to back to back is not particularly good. And then, he was having issues where he wanted to get some stuff checked out with his brain. I think he wanted to do some MRI stuff that maybe the UFC wasn't approving. I may be a little bit off about that, but I remember he was concerned about like his fight future at one point. So there was a little bit like 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out the door. And now like listening to him talk, like he's all in, he's back, like he's committed to this 100% again. And that's the kind of Carlos Condit that I think is a very dangerous guy. He's a very tricky striker. He's not even a bad grappler. It's just against like a skilled wrestler, it's hard for him to find his offense off of his back. So if he can sprawl, get to the fence, and just like mitigate being on his back and getting held down, he's going to be dangerous.
Yeah, he has a lot of submissions earlier in his career. But it's kind of like, how many submissions do we see per card now compared to 5 years ago or 10 years ago? people have learned to get out of it. Max Griffin probably can wrestle fack him for 3 rounds. I hope that doesn't happen. I want to see Carlos Condit win. I have no bet here.
Yeah, I mean,
how could you? I want to see Carlos win, and he definitely could pull some vet trick.
yeah. At plus 160, I like the value there. Griffin, none of his wins are particularly impressive to me. They both lost to Cowboy Oliveira. I think, who's their other common opponent? Maybe Thiago Alves. Yeah, so in one of their other common opponents, Thiago, Carlos has a win there. I don't know, like Carlos just has the experience. Both of these guys have a lot of fights. I think Carlos had just fought like better guys for longer, and it'll come down to whether or not like he's A, mentally committed, and B, like maybe if just father time has caught up to him here and he's not capable of performing the way he wants to. But I will back Carlos Condit, and I would take him at plus 190.
Cool.
Plus 160, I think.
So there's one particular fight with Max Griffin that really troubles me. I'm pretty sure it was the Zalim Aymadiev fight where I bet him inside the distance and pretty big. Or maybe it was versus Mike Perry. I'm not sure. It was one of those.
He won both of those by decision.
Yeah, but I bet him to win inside the distance, and I felt like he could have gotten it, but he just wasn't pulling the trigger. And ever since then, I've been super mad. It's been one of those fights. So,
yeah, nothing personal against Max Griffin, but Condit's one of the guys that I followed for a long time, and I will have his back.
And yeah, how can you not love the natural born killer?
Exactly. It's like bonus points for a movie nickname that I like. So I'm like, all right, I like this guy. Let's see what he's got. And he was great.
So that will be the end of the prelims. The main card starts on pay-per-view in the T-Mobile Arena at Vegas. I think UFC 264 Poirier versus McGregor 3. Is this the first fight back at T-Mobile Arena since? I think this is the first one back. Yeah, because they went to Florida, they went to Texas. Now we're back in Vegas, baby.
Mm-hmm. And I had heard rumors that they were going to do this at the Apex too, so I'm glad that it's at the T-Mobile Arena.
Yes. All right. So Sean O'Malley, who's 13-1 versus, damn it, is it Eric Moitendio?
Chris.
If you spell Eric backwards, it's almost Chris. So I was close. All right. So yeah, Sean O'Malley's minus 800, minus 900, minus 1,000 favorite. Here's the thing about this fight is a lot of people are trying to criticize Sean O'Malley because, they say he could have picked a different opponent. Well, I honestly don't think that he is picking his opponents. We had a couple people that put their name in the hat that probably couldn't make weight on a week's time. Some people that have missed weight. And Merab Devashvili has a fight with Marlon Moraes. He said, why don't I get that fight? There was another, I want to say Tyson Griffin, but I know that's horribly wrong.
Ricky
Simone.
Yep.
He's missed weight before. You think he's going to make 135 on a week's notice? Probably not. And he turned down a lesser opponent to get this guy who's going to stand with him for as long as it lasts. And are you a Sean O'Malley fan? Do you like his shtick? So I'll say another thing is that I saw him during media day, and he seemed quite cool and humble as hell. Online or maybe on his podcast, he might seem one way, like I've never lost, or whatever. He says dumb shit like that, which has stuck with him, maybe unfairly to a certain extent. But during the media day, he seemed pretty damn cool, in my opinion. So
that's fair. I didn't see it.
What do you think about the fight? What do you think about him?
I like watching him fight. I think he's got potential. The whole thing with like him hurting his foot and then being like, "Well, I still won that fight." Like, I mean, he was winning at the time that he got hurt, but whatever. Just take the loss and move on. It was more his comments, like around. I think it was Megan Anderson when him and Chase Kelly were, talking about her and his kind of flippant remarks about like, oh, I could just casually do heroin and like it's not going to be a problem, like very dismissive of people with like addiction issues. So to me that's kind of like smug and arrogant. I don't know. I don't know him personally. Like I rarely ever see him talk outside of build up for the fight. So me even seeing the podcast where all that stuff got mentioned was rare because I was just like on Twitter at the time and people were talking about it. So it's tough to make of like what kind of character he has. But he's definitely a character and he's entertaining and he knows it. And he should win this fight. I mean, the best odds you're probably going to get in this fight are O'Malley to win by stoppage or KO in round 1 is -110. So if you feel like betting O'Malley, bet him early against a guy with no big fight experience. Seems to be the way to go in that one. I mean, if Moutinho comes in and like pulls a crazy upset, like I'm not going to be mad at that either. If he comes in here and shocks the world and knocks O'Malley off, it's going to be really hard for Sean to, at that point, still talk shit. It's like you lost to a guy who they signed a week ago off the street, and you did it opening the card for Conor McGregor. So like the spotlight is going to be on you at that point. If you don't perform, like what excuses can you really pull from here?
Yeah. So during the media day scrum, he also said that he stops. So he didn't know that the Athletic Commission for Nevada decriminalized weed. I'm just going to call it decriminalized because it sounds cool. And he also said at the end of his scrum, round 2 KO. He's calling his shot. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to put 1 unit on Sean O'Malley to win in round 2 at plus 300.
Yeah, that's good right there. Plus 300, and say he's in control in the first round and he knows it. Like he doesn't have to throttle up and go for the finish at the end of the first round. So
no, and he probably wants to get some octagon time in too. A lot of his fights have ended early. It's good to get that octagon time under your belt, under the bright lights with the fans there. That is another bet for this card. Sean O'Malley wins in round 2, 1 unit to win 3. And I like that a lot. But he also says that he stops smoking weed 2 weeks prior to his camp to get it out of his system. And he even said that, well, he said it at the time, but knowing the addict mentality, if he is one, it's going to probably keep smoking. It's going to be interesting to see how this thing goes down with the decriminalization of weed, and we'll talk about that. Hopefully on the next episode, we get Robin here, talk about some other news that has been breaking. But at this point, we should move on to the next fight on this card, which is Irene Aldana versus Yana Kuntsakaya. Irene Aldana is a minus 120 favorite. She is 12-6-0. Yana is a slight dog, 14-5-0. I almost have a bet here on Yana, but do you have any thoughts on this one?
It's another pick'em fight. I mean, like, it's another fight where it matters to this division a lot. I'm not sure why they put this one on the main card.
Yeah.
But
you could easily put Carlos Condit on the main card.
I would, but I mean, you give Carlos Condit like the main event prelim spot. I'm okay with that too, because there'll be some eyeballs on that.
Or Nico Price versus Michelle Pereira. I mean, I think they want the excitement of the people that can watch it on free TV.
Yeah.
to then buy the pay-per-view.
But that's the idea, right? Is to like get you hooked on the free ones and then be like, oh yeah, this card is going to be great. So come on over.
Yeah,
Uh,
fire.
yeah. So, I mean, I like Kunitskaya. She's got a cool name. Losing to Cyborg's not a terrible loss on your resume. It was more like the Aspen Ladd fight a couple years ago, where she was Kunitskaya was not like the gatekeeper, but she's fighting the up and comer, and that's a fight that she, I don't know, needed to win to move a little bit higher and didn't. But Aspen Ladd is what 9-1 at this point, something like that. So you got to think that at least like her stock didn't take too much of a hit in hindsight. And Aldana, losing to Chikagian at home and Pennington, who have all fought or been fought for the belt or been belt holders themselves. Pretty respectable losses, and she's won basically everything else for the last 5 years. So I don't know. I would have to favor Aldana a little bit, which you see reflected in the odds. But yeah, it's a coin toss kind of a fight, I think, for sure.
Yeah. So Aldana, she doesn't have the best stand up defense for striking, and Yana has a crazy differential on strikes landed. I think she's landed over 100 strikes in her last 3 fights. Granted, she did lose to Cyborg, and her main problem is her Achilles heel is if she gets taken down and gets put on her back. But Aldana is not a threat in that aspect. So with the striking differential for Yana and then Aldana's bad, poor striking stand-up defense is I'm going to be picking Yana. I'll probably throw her into something, but
you can get her at plus 145 for decision, and all of her recent wins are decisions. So I don't think that's completely out of the question at all.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. But it's just my relationship with women's MMA right now is not great. If I had a better track record of betting WMMA right now, I probably would pick that because they always go to decision. But I think it's going to be an exciting fight. But I can't make it an official bet because they've just done me so dirty lately. But I think Yana is a good pick for underdog, and I'll probably have her in like small lunch money parlay or something like that just to make it entertaining.
Yeah, it's a coin toss fight, and if she can keep the fight where she wants it and just outwork Aldana, then plus 145 by decision is not bad. I mean, plus 700 for knockout or DQ win, but I don't know, unlikely.
Yeah, I like to. Yeah, my relationship has been when I see some of these fights and I see the crazy number on the under, I'm like, oh, there's always a chance. And so I'll bet it. And then I get disappointed. And then it's just like, I don't know. I'm not impressed by your performance.
Not impressed by your performance?
I am not impressed by your performance.
I was at that fight when George came into the cage and said
no way.
Yeah, it was at the pond.
The Anaheim Pond?
Yeah.
Well, formerly known as the Pond. It's now known as the Honda Center.
It was the pond when I went there.
Yeah. Are you a hockey fan at all either?
I used to be like a huge hockey fan, but then like all the teams, like I grew up a Kings fan, right? And then they dismantled that early 90s team that had Gretzky on it. They basically got rid of all the talent the year after they went to the Stanley Cup. And then they sucked for like 20 years. And then they were the best team in hockey all of a sudden and won the Stanley Cup a couple times in a couple of years. And then some of those guys got a little bit older and they've been on the downswing. And my family's team, my sister's team was the Red Wings. So I was like a Red Wings fan too. And they've been successful. And Steve Yzerman, who's on the Red Wings, goes and becomes the GM of Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay wins the cup like 3 times in 6 years. So it's not that I don't like hockey. It's just that like I'm an underdog kind of guy. Like I always cheer for the underdog. My favorite football team is the Buffalo Bills. So
Oh my gosh. So in the 90s, so was mine.
So I want, like, as soon as the Bills win a Super Bowl, like I don't even know if I'll watch football anymore, to be honest, because it's just like they finally did it. What is there left for me to cheer for? I'm not going to find some other team. So I will always be that kind of guy. But I just like the Stanley Cup just ended. Tampa Bay dominated. But yeah, I'm generally a hockey fan. I love going to hockey games, but I don't really follow the season like I used to probably like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, when you called it the pond, I had a feeling that you were in the closet
Timo
hockey fan.
Solani, Paul Correa.
Yeah, see, so you are.
Yeah. I was a huge hockey fan for a while. I've kind of like tapered off because, again, a lot of my favorite players have retired and gone away, and like just keeping up with it is laborious. So every now and then I'll find like some team or player that I like and I'll start to watch them and get back into it. But it's been a slog. There's not too much hockey on TV these days, so it's a little bit harder for me to watch outside of the playoffs.
Straight up. All right. Well, let's move on to now the feature event of this pay-per-view card. Tai Tuivasa, who is 12-3. He's minus 135. First, Greg Hardy, plus 115. Greg Hardy is 7-3 in his professional MMA career. Should be a fun fight. I don't know. What do you think about all this?
I don't know. Greg Hardy he's a character, all right. Because I heard some of what he said at the press conference. I don't know, maybe a couple of days ago last week. Like he's got really high aspirations for himself, which I mean is obviously good. Like you're in a combat sport, you're a competitor at the highest level for a long time, so believing in yourself is good. But to just look past a guy like Tuivasa is a mistake, I think. You're talking about a guy who's got more high level experience than you, has wins over your common opponent. So thinking that you're going to go in there, like destroy this guy and then go like box Deontay Wilder. I mean, that's a little ambitious, but like if Wilder loses to Fury, which will probably happen, and what's left for Wilder at heavyweight, like a fight against Greg Hardy, like moving out of the UFC into like a weird freak show boxing match that we've seen a lot of lately. It could happen, to be honest, but if that's what he's thinking about and he's not thinking about the guy in front of him, Tuivasa is going to hurt him.
Yeah.
And he's going to drink a beer out of someone's shoe in the front row afterwards.
And everyone in the front row is going to spit in that shoe.
Well, there is a COVID spike going on in Vegas, so let's see what happens after.
Let's just spread it around. Fuck it. Let's put it in a sprinkler and then just shoot it out in the whole crowd.
Shoeies for everyone.
I got Tai Tuivasa at minus 135, risking 1.35 units to win one.
Surprisingly small favorite there, I would say.
Yeah, well, Greg Hardy he's a one-round fighter, and granted, he did look good against Volkov. Thinking about that fight again, it's kind of weird how Volkov like didn't finish him, but you know, he doesn't have that crazy striking power. So he does look good on the feet. Granted, Greg Hardy does have some stand-up skills, and you know, he looks decent on the feet.
He's a good athlete.
Yeah, but I think leg kicks are going to play a factor in this. Tai Tuivasa is going to chop him down. If Tai Tuivasa decides to take him down, then he's fucked, I think. But he probably won't. He's a crazy Aussie, and he's going to want to stand and bang. I think that he's more Tai Tuivasa has more tools on the feet. He's probably more durable. We've seen Greg Hardy quit before, and Tai Tuivasa needs to kind of like be flatlined to quit. I just think that he's got more ways to win this, and I don't have a lot of faith in Greg Hardy. Tuivasa's fought two former champions, and he's my pick here, and he's also a bet.
Yeah, I mean, you can get him TKO victory or TKO or KO for plus 145. You can get him inside the distance at plus 125. So those are really good odds considering I think that's probably the most likely way that fight plays out. He's got slicker striking defense and slicker counters than Hardy as well. So even if Hardy does possess, power, athleticism advantage, and he's going to throw some big riskier strikes from the outside, Tuivasa, I think, can counter and hurt Hardy and deflect most of the damage, I would say. It's like, obviously, these are big guys. Greg Hardy's got power. He may be able to potentially win the fight by stoppage, but I would say that if you're getting plus 140 on Tai Tuivasa to win by KO or TKO, those are good odds.
Yeah, and one thing that gives me pause is that Tai Tuivasa got to Vegas. I think it was Tuesday, which is
the travel's been very restricted lately.
And yeah, that means jet lag and a whole lot of stuff. So, I mean, hopefully that pans out.
That's a good point. So it may not be like a first round kind of fight after all, but I don't know. I'll still side with Tuivasa on this one. I think his skill set is deeper, like you said, and I think he's fought the better competition for longer. And he's got a win over Tybura, who beat Hardy. So
yeah, and if it comes down to a war of attrition, I would favor Greg Hardy to give up and Tai Tuivasa to just be like an animal. Because we've seen Greg Hardy quit before, and once you're a quitter, always a quitter.
And I think everybody probably wants to see Tai Tuivasa knock him out too. So it'll be a good moment if that happens.
It's like Greg Hardy's popular, but he's not a fan favorite.
No.
If that makes any sense.
He's a company favorite. They like him though, because he's got marketability.
For some reason. All right, moving on to the co-main event of the evening. Gilbert Burns, who is plus 130, 19-4-0, versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who is favored at minus 155, 16-4-1. Let me get your initial thoughts on this bout.
My initial thoughts are that Wonderboy should win this fight. I mean, he's much better at distance. His takedown defense has been really good lately. I think since there was a fight where I can't remember who it was, but he kind of just like got grappled up and couldn't really deal with it.
Matt Brown,
yeah. And so since then, I think he's like 17 of 19 on takedown defense. So the odds are that this fight will be contested where Stephen Thompson wants it to be, and that'll be on like the outside of his karate range. And he's the bigger guy. He's been fighting at 170 for a while. Gilbert Burns spent some time down at 155. But, we saw Wonderboy basically beat the crap out of Anthony Pettis and still get knocked out. So he's shown that he's vulnerable to a guy from a smaller weight class coming up. So I can see why the odds are not more heavily in Wonderboy's favor at this point. Both guys have fought for the belt and lost, but I don't know. I just feel that Stephen Thompson's been at the higher level for a little bit longer, and he's a lot trickier to deal with on the feet than Burns. It's not like Burns is a bad fighter or anything. I mean, he showed in his run up to his title fight that he's well-rounded. He's got power, and he's got a good ground game. I just don't think he'll be able to use the ground game. So if the fight's going to be contested as mostly a striking contest, you got to favor Wonderboy.
Yeah. So there's a thing that happens with people that challenge for the belt and they lose. They usually don't come back looking the same. And this is why I'm going to be picking Wonderboy and also betting him. I'm risking 1.6 units to win one. He's already challenged for the belt and then proved that he can climb that mountain again, which he's right there. And granted, Gilbert Burns did look good for a round against Kamaru. But like you said, when he fought Matt Brown and he was getting taken down like that, he was not cutting weight the right way. He he said that he was severely ill while he was cutting weight for that fight. Didn't have a nutritionist. He went back to the drawing board, got that nutritionist, worked on his takedown defense. So I think this is gonna be a fight primarily taking place on the feet, which obviously gives Wonder Boy the advantage. So Wonder Boy is going to be winning minutes in this fight. Can he win the rounds? The only scenario that I see playing out is that, Wonder Boy is picking him apart and then Gilbert land something crazy at the end of a round to drop him, and then the judge might give him.
Which we've seen in several of Wonder Boy's fights. I think it happened in both of the championship fights against Woodley. He was ahead and then pushing Woodley against the fence and got hit with a counter that hurt him. Happened in the Pettis fight too. So it's not entirely out of the question that could happen.
Yeah. I also think that Wonder Boy loses by being flatlined here. I don't think he loses a decision to Gilbert Burns. But, in that unlikely scenario that I said, which, this is a sport of MMA, anything can happen. He could be winning 4.5 minutes and then get dropped at the end of 2 rounds and then end up losing a decision to Adelaide Bird or Chris Fuckboy, whatever his name is.
Well, in those fights that we're talking about, Wonder Boy getting dropped, it was when he had his opponent against the fence. So it was when when he couldn't control the range anymore, where the range was fixed. So if they fight the fight in open space and he's controlling it with, that front kick, that question mark kick, his jab, the straight punches, and then Burns has to chase him to make the fight happen, that's a much better scenario, I think, for Wonder Boy outpointing him and outstriking him for 15 minutes if it goes that long. But if he pushes Burns back against the fence and he's trying to finish, like, that's maybe the one area where Burns's punching range all of a sudden comes into play and he can maybe land that counter. So it'll be curious to see how Wonder Boy handles that situation if it should arise, knowing that he's kind of been in jeopardy in those moments before.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how Gilbert Burns is going to show up too, because it's your first fight after a title challenge loss. Does not look good for a lot of people.
And especially not when you get knocked out either. So it's not like he, took a little bit of damage and got outpointed. It's like he got blasted and lost that fight. So yeah, it's a tough comeback fight for him against a guy who's even a trickier striker than the champion that he fought. So I if he gets desperate outside of that range and tries to make something happen by coming in, Wonder Boy's a really good counter striker. So I could see Wonder Boy ending it. And I think the odds on him, let's see, him winning by inside the distance is plus 250. And it's like he's not going to submit Gilbert Burns. So you might as well take plus 270 for Wonder Boy to win by KO if you want to go that route.
Yeah. I just have some problems with props lately. I would rather risk the 1.6 units to win one, because I think very likely scenario is an outpointing kind of situation.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if Wonder Boy doesn't want to engage when he's pushing the action, like we were talking about. Like if he doesn't want to put himself into the range where he can get countered, he can fight that fight in the middle of the cage for the majority of the fight and have a significant advantage. So, might as well.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see the approach that Gilbert Burns takes. Like, does he go for a double leg immediately, or does he try and stand? Is he going to go for a takedown? I mean, if I'm him, I would go for a takedown, but
you might as well shoot your shot early while you have the energy. And if you can get Wonder Boy down early in the first round, even if you don't necessarily end the fight, like you make him uncomfortable and have to worry about that going forward. Whereas if you're losing the striking battle and you're on the outside of that range, and then you have to shoot in for like a desperation double or try and hook a single or like an ankle pick or something at long distance, that's going to give Wonder Boy a lot better odds of defending that takedown. So if Burns is going to take that shot, I would do it in the first, couple exchanges.
Yeah. Well, speaking of people who just got knocked out 6 months ago, in our main event, we have Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier. Conor McGregor is 22-5-0. He is a plus 115 underdog right now. Versus Dustin the Diamond Poirier, 27-6-0. This is a huge fight. The winner will be fighting Charles Oliveira for the undisputed lightweight crown. Dustin Poirier deferred to have this fight, this rematch with Conor McGregor instead of fighting Charles Oliveira for the belt. So money was on his mind when he made the decision for this fight. And I mean, I don't know. Do you have anything to say about this at all? Or
I don't like, this is obviously a huge fight, right? And Dustin made the right decision by going the trilogy route because, win, lose, draw, whatever happens, like Dustin's taken care of money wise for the rest of his career and he can kind of do what he wants. He's talked about going up to 170. And there's some fights there that are interesting for him where he's, arguing with Colby and stuff online. So there's a future for him at 170. And I think we talked about it a little bit on the last show where I was saying that I don't think Dustin needs to win this fight. Conor needs to win this fight. Like if Conor McGregor wants to be the Conor McGregor that calls the shots and does what he does, he's got to win. He can't run his mouth the way he's running his mouth and come out here and get finished by Poirier again, or like all that's over. Like the mystique is gone. The whole thing is that like Conor makes these great adjustments, right? But we only saw him have one rematch against Nate, and he made good adjustments, yeah, but like that fight was still close. So it, like he didn't finish Nate. Conor's need to win is the only thing that's making me feel that Conor is going to win because he has to be fully invested in this now. But then I listened to the interviews he did with Stephen A. Smith and with Ariel Helwani, and it just seemed like there were some canned answers. Like, and I don't know if it's Conor saying these things that he's trying to get himself to believe in, or if this is like the script that he's written for like the promo side of things, right? Because Stephen A pushed back on him about like, a lot of things. And it was actually a pretty good interview, as much as I generally don't like Stephen A. Smith. He did a good job with the interview.
He's going to be in the commentary team, he's not cage side, but he's going to be at the desk. Or
who else is at the desk with him? Dominic or Rashad?
I don't know, but Stephen A. is there. Another ESPN talking head is going to be there too.
Yeah, I think Keller.
Anyways, go ahead.
So yeah, I think like Conor needs to win the fight a lot more than Dustin does because Conor's got unfinished business at 155 because he never defended that belt either. Dustin never held the full piece of it like he wanted to, so there's incentive for him to win, but you can never take away the knockout that he had over McGregor. Like you're never going to be able to take away the money he's making from this fight. But I understand why the money came in on Poirier and why he's the favorite.
Yeah. A lot of Conor's antics here seem like he's trying to sell the older version of himself, who was an absolute legend, first person to hold simultaneous belts. But I just think it's a little forced. Like he's trying to manufacture something that's not there. And Conor is not, how do I say this? He's not like a fighter's fighter. He's not a Diego Sanchez. He's not a Nate Diaz. He faces adversity and it seems to get the best of him. And not only that, he can work as hard as he wants, but I don't think that having extreme high level of cardio was ever in the cards for him, just genetically, mentally, or whatever. he seems to like. So we've seen Dustin Poirier in terrible situations come back and end up winning fights. And I mean, we kind of really haven't seen that with Conor McGregor. He gets in a bad spot and then he ends up losing very quickly, even in the Diaz. Well, let me ask you, how did you score the Nate Diaz rematch?
I had Conor winning 3-2.
Okay.
I understand why, obviously I love the Diaz brothers, but it's like Conor I think he had like 2 knockdowns in the first round, another knockdown in the second round. So it's like, it's almost 10-8 in the first round. And so he just got out ahead by so much that there just wasn't time. But if you just give Nate another round, or if there's no time limit on that fight, Nate's going to win that fight.
Yeah.
And you just see Conor start to slow down. I think what I'll say is like, for 10 minutes, maybe even a little bit less, maybe like 7-8 minutes, like Conor is phenomenal. He's one of the best fighters of all time when he's got all of his energy and like everything is firing on all cylinders. But like you said, we've seen him face adversity, and as the fight goes deeper, that's not where he's at his best. That's where Poirier's at his best. We've seen Dustin against Eddie Alvarez, like getting beat up, against Justin Gaethje getting beat up, against Dan Hooker getting beat up. Like those first 10, 15 minutes are often rough for Poirier. And in the first round of the rematch with Conor, he lost he lost the first round. So it's not unexpected to see Poirier come back. So what does Conor do differently? He's going to go out here and try and hurt him more. And this guy's a corpse, and he's just about like putting him in a body bag and take him out on a stretcher and all this stuff that he's saying. It's in Conor's best interest to try to end that fight early, because the longer it goes, the more it's going to favor Poirier's style of fight. And we saw in the rematch that Conor's got exceptional vision and counter timing, right? Like every punch that Dustin was trying to throw, Conor was doing a great job of slipping and getting his licks in. And Dustin's not stupid. He understood that, which is why he invested in the calf kick. So it's going to be a super, super interesting rematch, if not just to see how each guy approaches it. Because it could go down exactly the same way as either of the other 2 fights that they've already had. So it's going to be like the little adjustments. And you have to at least think that a motivated Conor with the right kind
mythical
of
fighter,
fight, right? Sober Conor, sober-vated Conor, as one of the Twitter accounts. It's like he was dealing with like wanting to fight Manny Pacquiao, which was true. He had already knocked out Dustin really easily the first time they fought, which is also true. So there's some truth to what kind of was maybe mentally inhibiting his approach to fighting Dustin the second time. And like they were going to do it for charity and all these different things. So I think there's reason to both believe that Conor could be better prepared and more specifically trained to fight Dustin in this third fight than he was in the second fight.
sure.
But I think there's also reason to believe that some of what he's saying is bravado and maybe pumping himself up a little bit, because he did get knocked out.
Yeah, he got knocked out 6 months ago. And there's questions about his chin now. Floyd Mayweather fucked him up. Nate Diaz dropped him. Dustin Poirier just knocked him out. His durability is in question now. And I'm not that he even had like a crazy war before he was champion. He just was sparking people the whole time.
Yeah. Like I said, that first like 5-10 minutes, like he's unreal, because
so in this first round, Dustin has to survive rounds 1 and maybe 2, and then the fight's his. If the fight enters the third round, I will run naked on this YouTube stream and Conor wins after round 3, during or after round 3. It's just not going to happen. I
don't think so.
Just doesn't have it in the cards anymore. And Dustin Poirier can pour it on. He can Poirier it on for rounds 4 and 5. I just don't even see Conor making it that way. It's one of the boxers from the old school, I think the 80s, I forget who it was, but it's hard to get up and run at 5 a.m. in the morning when you're sleeping in silk sheets. And even despite that, I just don't think that having that kind of Diaz or Diego Sanchez or Darren Elkins mentality is just in the cards for him. Not that he doesn't want to be that person. I think he would very much so love to be a Diaz or a Darren Elkins, but he just kind of relies on positive momentum in his fights. And once things start going wrong for him, they turn bad very fast. It's like it goes from bad to worse to like gone.
Yeah.
So I see that happening. So Dustin, 2.7 units to win 2. This is going to be, other than the Hall versus Tybura, under 2.5 rounds, which is 2.6 units. I'm risking 2.7 to win 2 on this one. So that's the bet.
That's fair.
And probably inside the distance, but I can't find inside the distance. And so I'm kind of predicting a submission by Dustin here. Here's the other thing is that the person who wins the rematch of a trilogy, like 12 out of 3 times, I think it's happened in the UFC, the person who wins the second fight is going to win the third fight. So we have that scenario here. I like Dustin to win by submission, but I don't want to lay. I don't want to risk losing the bet on a good pick of mine. And also at the book that I'm at, Intertops and Bet Any Sport, you can probably find Dustin Porier inside the distance at plus money, and I would take it, but I can't do that, so I'm not going to lie to you. I'm telling you what I'm betting, and that's it. You can probably pull it up now and tell them about it. But
yeah, what are the odds you think Conor shoots for a takedown, like strategically to just fuck with Poirier?
Well, he's not. I think very low. What Conor needs to do is come out and establish a kicking game early towards the legs. So he was super plodding, super boxing heavy against Dustin Porier. Are you kidding me? I'm sorry. You're going to try and stand flat-footed in front of Dustin Porier? Well, that's what's going to happen. So he needs to establish, and Dustin even said that the calf kick wasn't even a part of his game plan. It just started working. I don't watch him betted, but I caught a couple clips.
Yeah.
And the calf kick wasn't even like a big part of their game plan, but it started working. So, I mean, if it's working, might as well run with it.
It was just what was there. And so being a good fighter and having a lot of experience against high level guys while Conor was off doing whatever, Dustin invested what was right in front of him rather than trying to get something that wasn't there. And you saw that it paid off. He also threw a lot of really like good body shots early in the fight while Conor was like hitting him upstairs. And he actually, in the finishing sequence, right before he lands the right hand that drops him, he fakes a left hand to the body that gets Conor to cover up the liver, and he blasts him in the head with it. And that's really one of the shots that led to the end of that fight right there. Like, if Conor really wants to be a mixed martial artist, it may be in his best interest to find a way to get this fight to the ground. He had success in the clinch in the first fight. And if he's up, say, 2-0, right, and he's looking good, we all know that Poirier is going to come on stronger in the second half of the fight, and he may be in a position where the momentum is starting to slip away from him, and a takedown is what could be the difference in the fight. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Conor grapple in this fight. I know he doesn't want to.
It's never really worked out for him, though.
It hasn't. Yeah, like most of the grappling he's done has been after he hurt somebody standing.
Or after he got caught or tired, then he shoots.
I will say, though, I think the UFC is in a better place and the sport is in a better place when Conor McGregor is successful.
No, I totally agree with that 100%. And it's better for the sport if Conor wins. It really is.
And he needs it more. But yeah, Dustin's a tough out, man. He's a tough out against everybody. Conor learned that the hard way last time. I think he will probably make all of the necessary adjustments. And the truth is, it may just not be enough because Dustin's that good now.
Yeah. And, Conor could easily win by first round knockout. I mean, not easily, but it wouldn't be surprising if that happened.
It wouldn't.
Okay. Well, that has been our UFC 264 preview. And at this point, we like to tell us where we could find you at Nick Shiesty. And do you have any shout outs for this week?
Right. You can find me at Nick Shiesty on Instagram and Twitter. And we're going to shout out our resident commissioner, Adam Silver, who wasn't able to join us today. But him and all the dudes hanging out in the group chat, supporting the supporting the podcast. I appreciate it.
Yes, and I am at Ash1 MMA, and I'll give a shout out to Adam Silver too. Why the F not? And for everyone else, step your game up. We are out.